Good morning. Welcome back to Vero Beach, Florida. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. As you can see, it's not your quintessential beach day. We're in the throes of potential tropical cyclone 1. The center, a very broad center, has now moved inland just northeast of Naples, where they've had upwards of 10 inches of rain in southwest Florida. Here, we just got hit with the rain about 4 hours ago, most of the rain. In fact, the previous 3 hours we'd had over 2 1/3 inches. Right now, we've just hit 4 inches of rain. It's raining at about an inch an hour. Last hour we had 85/100ths of an inch, so we're getting some ponding on the roadways. By the way, the winds have gusted upwards of 40 miles an hour, so we've had some, palm fronds come down. I just want to show you what happens when it rains this hard. No surprise, you've got the ponding, the standing water here in the gutters and on the streets, so you need to slow down or just wait about another hour or so. Look at the radar. This little MCS, this little mesoscale convective system, kind of a small feature on the radar. It's twirling around, and we're right under it. I mean, we're right in the thick of it. You go down to the south, not very far, Fort Pierce, not raining at all. And the winds coming in from the east-southeast right off the Atlantic. I was out there earlier, and it's churned up. We've got 4 or 5 footers out there. We're getting some minor beach erosion, but that's it. There's no concern with inundation in any of these beachfront properties or any kind of surge. So with that said, about an hour or so, we should be out of the rain. That'll be the brunt of it, and then things will back off, and we will dry out through the afternoon and this evening. But again, we didn't get as much rain. We're not going to get as much rain as they did in Miami-Dade and Broward counties, where they've had excessive flash flooding. Alex, we'll go back to you. We'll see how long we are right under this swirl, and then we should dry out.
Well, I'm sure looking forward to that time when things do start to brighten up. Thanks so much, Mike. Meteorologist Mike Seidel joins us live from Vero Beach, where we've been seeing some of that rain falling over the past few hours. And Mike, that seems to be the calling card with this system, right? The heavy downpours.
Yeah, these are the basic tropical downpours. We gusted earlier to 41 miles an hour, not quite as gusty now, but we did pick up another 92/100ths of an inch of rain last hour. Almost an inch of rain. Now we picked up 4 3/4 inches of rain. Most of that has fallen since 8 this morning. This is much like what they saw down in Miami-Dade and Broward County overnight, when they got pummeled with rainfall at 1 to 2 inches an hour. The wind doesn't do much at 40 miles an hour, blows down a few palm fronds, quick cleanup. But what it does is it collects on the highways and in the curbs. So you're going to get ponding, you're going to get some minor street flooding, as you can see here, about 4 or 5 inches deep. And once the rain backs off and once it ends, this is all going to drain away. But this is not a great day to be driving, certainly over the speed limit. It's so easy to hydroplane, and the wind is coming off the water southeast at about 15 to 20 miles an hour, and the surf is up. We'll show you some video I shot down on the beach coming up. There is some beach erosion, but there's not going to be any issues with surge or overwash. Well, look at the radar. We've got this little MCV, mesoscale convective vortex, which has kind of been spinning over us now for about 3 hours, and it's not moving. It's kind of back building down to our south, not too far to our south and south-southwest, not even down to Fort Pierce down the road. But you can see it's just sitting over us and dumping, again, almost an inch last hour. The hour before we had about 9/10 of an inch. So a steady rainfall rate. It comes and goes. It's backed off a little bit now, but it just keeps adding up and adding up. And remember, they had a lot of rain earlier in the weekend, last weekend. Miami now had over 9 inches of rain in June, but keep in mind, June is their wettest month on record with about 10.5 inches of rain on average. Very wet month for any spot, even on the Gulf Coast in the lower 48. So we've got the rain, we've got some wind. This is going to back off here by early to mid-afternoon, and then we'll be free and clear by this evening and back to more typical Florida weather on Sunday. So, Alex, it just keeps coming down. You can see on the radar we're just stuck under this, and until it gets kicked out, the system is moving northeast at about 18 miles an hour. We're going to be in this very heavy rainfall for quite a while. But looking around and checking some of the areas in the area which typically flood intersections, we haven't heard or seen of anything that is very significant. It seems to be draining off pretty good right now, at least.
Well, it's good to hear that for the moment things are good, but as you mentioned, with that rain still coming down.
Good morning and welcome back to our coverage of potential tropical cyclone 1. A big broad circulation has moved inland, now northeast to Naples towards Lake Okeechobee. It'll be off the coast later on this afternoon, and we'll be done with it in Florida, but we're not quite done with the rainfall. We picked up another almost inch last hour, and since then we picked up another quarter inch. So right now we're right around 5 inches of rain here in Vero Beach, and just about all of that has fallen since sunrise this morning. The other impact is out on the beach, minimal impact. Look at that surf this morning. Swells coming in from the southeast, basically the wind direction. 4, 5, 6 footers rolling in. There has been some beach erosion, but the tide is really not much higher than typically what you typically see, and there's no concern with any kind of storm surge. That's out on the beach. On the roadways, though, it's the ponding and the standing water. You can see right here in front of me, the water has already gone down. The rainfall has lightened up, and it doesn't take long for it to drain away as long as the drains are wide open. I can see the one down the street here towards Beachland Boulevard, that it is wide open. Want to show you the radar. This is what we've been in since about 8 o'clock this morning. This little MCV, mesoscale convective, what we call vortex, a little spin, a little swirl on the radar, and we've had some very heavy rainfall, as I mentioned, how much we've had just 7 this morning since sunrise, but it is now backing up. It's swirling back to the west, so we're getting in the lighter rain. If you look off to the east, it's lightened up where it's not raining at all, and that little finger is arced back down towards just into the northern portions of Fort Pierce, but it's covering up I-75 and the Florida Turnpike. So again, any travel today, if you can't postpone it in the midst of this heavy rainfall, you got to slow down. You can't go over the speed limit with rain because it's very easy to hydroplane with all the standing water. With that said, by later this afternoon, we'll be out of the rain, and it'll be smooth sailing back to more typical Florida weather, Alex, as we get into Sunday and next week. But we played catch-up here as Miami and Fort Lauderdale got doused overnight, and even right now, heavy rain at Miami International. We didn't have much of anything overnight, but it really came in fast and furious earlier this morning, especially starting in the 8 a.m. hour. Alex?
All right, thanks so much, Mike and Dee. Feeling all that rain coming down there.
We had some wind gusts, but another stronger wind gust north of here. Let's travel there about, say, 2.5 hours with no traffic up to Vero Beach, where Mike Seidel has been riding out the impacts of whatever this system becomes, Mike. But I know you had the wind there. How's the rain been this afternoon?
Oh, the rain came in here late. You guys got pummeled late last night, and overnight you had upwards of 10 inches of rain. We had hardly anything until sunrise, Paul, and then this little spin in the radar. Dr. Nab mentioned some little swirls. You could see them in the radar, came in and sat over us for over 3 hours. Now we're up to just over 5 inches of rain. Again, most of that fell in the past 4 to 5 hours, so about an inch an hour. Our peak wind gust was 41 earlier. We're still gusting close to 30. You can see the palm trees getting hit by these winds. There's some palm fronds down. I can show you some of those. Basically, that is the limit to any kind of cleanup. Some of these smaller palm fronds, not huge pieces of the palm tree. Now, when I was out here just an hour ago, this was about 6 to 7 inches deep. Now it's drained off because the rain effectively has stopped. Still a pretty good breeze off the Atlantic. We're going to go out to the surf and show you what that looks like. It is churned up, but again, no issues with any kind of a surge or inundation to any of these properties. Let me take you back to earlier, and I can show you right off the top the surf, and it looks like a big wash tub. Swells coming in from the southeast, 4, 5, 6 footers. High tide was earlier, but again, not anything to worry about. Not even getting close to the dune line. And then the rainfall, sheets of rain, gusty winds all morning long. But look at the radar right now. You can see that that little swirl has kind of weakened, and we've got some rain now west of us and north of us up towards Palm Bay and Melbourne. But compare this, Melbourne, about 45 minutes up the road, has had about 1 1/3 inches, and we've had just over 5 inches. So it's a very tight gradient, and we just got hit very, very hard, but not the impacts they had down in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. So we're left with a wind, a few more showers, and that's it. And Chris Warren, I can tell you the water temp here is 79. Down in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, in the Keys, the water temp's already in the low 80s. So that begs the question, what kind of beach day do we have on tap tomorrow and into the first part of the week here in the Sunshine State?
Hey, I think it looks pretty good, Mike. You know, I've seen a look outside at Naples right now. There's not a cloud in the sky, and it's brilliant blue hues. So things are going to clear out there, I think, in just a few hours as this whole system pushes offshore. Thanks for the update. We'll check back in to see how things are improving.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Vero Beach. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. We have shifted from inland by about a block out to the ocean. We wanted to show you what even a potential tropical cyclone does to the Atlantic. It is angry. It's all churned up out there. We've got 6 to 8 footers. Now we're just a couple of hours past high tide. High tide really didn't get much higher than yesterday's high tide before this came in. But I want to show you the impact, about the only impact. We don't have to worry about inundation or storm surge, but look at this big cut in the beach here. About 2 feet of sand. You can see it's right up here on the top of my thigh. So we've lost quite a bit of sand now. Naturally, it will be replenished, but the surf is really churned up. I want to take you back to earlier, and I'll show you the surf from earlier. When we got that heavy rain in here, we've had just over 5 inches of rain, and it came down in sheets between about 8 and about 11 o'clock. This little spin on the radar, this little mesoscale convective vortex basically sat over us. And we're not sure. I just talked to Stu Ostro, our senior meteorologist. This may be the beginning of the reformation of the center as it goes off the coast. But the bottom line is we got a pretty stiff gradient wind right now. It's running about 25 miles an hour. We're gusting 30 to 35 miles an hour. You can see on the radar there's really not much rain left. We are pretty much done with the rainfall, thankfully. And we didn't have the impacts that they had down in Miami and Fort Lauderdale because they had double what we had. We had about 5 inches of rain. Now, just up the coast, Melbourne, the Space Coast, rainfall amounts drop off considerably where they've only had 1 1/3 inches from the storm. These totals I'm giving you are from Friday and Saturday, but about 90% of our rain fell between sunrise and late this morning. So we're going to be dealing with the wind this afternoon. Again, the rip current issue. I don't see anybody going in the water. There's a lot of folks getting out here taking pictures and video of the surf. And we'll have rip current issues tomorrow as the surf subsides, as the storm pulls away. So still rip currents tomorrow. Keep that in mind because tomorrow's going to be a much better beach day as the sun comes on out. So, Chris, it's a pretty frothy scene out here considering we don't even have a named storm, but we almost did.
Yeah, Mike, it is one of those weather systems that was trying to form right on our doorstep, right on top of us. And, you know, sometimes it just doesn't quite get that level of organization.
Well, the tropical moisture is bringing dangerous conditions, including flooding. We saw it not just in South Florida, but even up the coast a bit towards Vero Beach. And meteorologist Mike Seidel is live there. You've been showing us the wind and waves. Mike, you know, there's been talk that this system isn't even purely tropical. They've even noticed a drop in temperature. How does it feel like outside? Does it feel like it does after a tropical storm kind of comes through?
Yeah, it's pretty muggy out here. Our temperatures are in the mid-70s and the dew point's in the low 70s. So it's pretty summery, although typically by this time of the day it would be well into the mid to the upper 80s. It's brightening up out here, but I want to show you about the only impact we've seen. We've seen a few palm fronds blown down from 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But look at the erosion here. Now, this is the storm drainage pipe where all the rainwater goes out into the Atlantic. Well, look where I'm standing. It's about a 3-foot cut right here. This is about as severe as I've seen up and down the beach. And you can see the surf out here is just all wound up by these winds out here. Waves running 6 to 7 feet. If you look far enough out, you can see how far they're breaking. A completely different visual than we had this time yesterday when we had 1-footers. So winds are blowing almost on shore, maybe a little south of east, and about 20 to 25 miles an hour, gusting in the 30s. I want to show you what we were showing earlier. Well, they have gone in, but we had some kids in the surf, some young kids in the surf down there. They have now gone in, which is a good thing because it doesn't take much to get pulled out in this kind of surf with the rip currents and just the wave action. The best bet is if you're going to go in the water, your ankles, maybe right here, and that's it. And then wait on tomorrow, the sun comes out. But again, still the rip currents tomorrow. We won't have the surf being as rough. I want to take you back to this morning when we got about 90% of our rain here on Vero Beach. Look at the rainfall coming down in sheets. It started around sunrise. We had this little spin, this little whirly on the radar. It sat over us, little mesoscale convective vortex, and boy, it just dumped. It really didn't move much, and we ended up with about 5 inches of rain, just over 5 inches of rain. Most of that falling between about 7 a.m. and 11 a.m. We had some street flooding and ponding, but we checked some intersections in town and that usually flood, and everything was in pretty good shape. Once the rain stopped, it went on down. Now let's spin around. We've got a surfer out here in the distance. We can see if we can find the bobbing head. There he is, about a block down the beach. out in the ocean. There's one surfer. Also, there's some kids coming in the water. Hopefully, I think they may have a parent out there, but you just don't want to take a chance of getting pulled out because there are no lifeguards out here. And look at this, back here, kids going back in the water. Boy, we'll keep an eye on them for you. I just don't want anybody to get caught by kind of a rogue wave and get pulled out and get in trouble. So, Chris, rough surf, a lot of rain earlier. That's the story earlier. Now it's just about the surf and the beach erosion we've showed you right here in Vero Beach.
That sounds like you're the lifeguard, Mike, for the time being. So whistle needed, and then you keep an eye on them as we continue to follow the sites there in Vero Beach, Florida. Thanks for the update.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. We're here on Vero Beach, Florida, and we are pretty much done with the rain. Let me show you what it looked like this morning. We got hit hard. Most of our rain fell between sunrise and about 11 a.m. Our storm total so far just a tad over 5 inches. So we had about half the total that they saw down to the south in Miami-Dade and Broward counties. We've been seeing Paul Goodloe showing the flooding earlier around some of those intersections and under some of the underpasses. So they really got hit hard overnight. I mean, it was unrelenting. Numerous flash flood warnings. Up here, we didn't get much rain until daylight. Dribs and drabs overnight. So now we've got this stiff wind from the east running at about 15 to 20 miles an hour, gust over 30. And the only impact we've seen on the beach is this beach erosion. There's a pretty good cut here. This is a little over 2.5 feet right here. And we're seeing that up and down the beach. Now, this will naturally replenish in time, but this is going to be around for a few days at least. And remember the rip currents, that's going to be an issue today. Certainly nobody really needs to be in the water today. And again, tomorrow when the sun comes out and more people come out to the beach. Water temperature here, by the way, 79 degrees, so it's coming up. Down in South Florida, it's in the low 80s, and that's very swimmable. Speaking of that, we're looking down the beach. We do have a surfer in the water, but we also have 2 other folks that are out in the breakers, and they're trying to deal with the rip currents and the surf and the undertow. We have some kids closer to the shore where you should be, but just concerned because there are no lifeguards out here, and even the best swimmers can get caught in this undertow and rip current when you have this onshore wind. And then you're looking at the wave action, 6-7 footers out there breaking in longshore roll-ins up to the sand and then eating away at the beach. Other than that, no concerns here of any storm, surge, or inundation. The high tide was earlier, 11:30-ish. Our next low tide coming up at 5:45, so the water is trying to go out, but we do have an onshore wind. Now, let's take a look at the radar. The center of the system is nearby. It was southwest of Fort Pierce. It was just south of here at 2 p.m. Eastern, and it's moving northeast at 18. So basically, it's going to pass right over us. But again, it's such a broad circulation. The only way you know it really is the wind shift and also looking at your home barometer. But it's not going to go down and come up like you see with a much stronger system, a quick drop and then rise in pressure like you see with a hurricane. With that said, we still have the wind issues, and this morning we had the localized street flooding, but nothing like down in South Florida. Looking ahead to tomorrow, it'll be a drier day. The surf will back off, but again, the rip currents will still be an issue. And one thing we didn't have to worry about after all, we were concerned about the potential for some severe weather, but by and large, it worked out pretty much as expected. Dr. Nab, it was all about the rain. I mean, as you say, it doesn't take a tropical storm or hurricane. In fact, those systems tend to drop less rain because they tend to move faster. This thing came in at about 6 or 7 miles an hour. Luckily, it sped up, but the rainfall has been prolific. You've seen many tropical storms that don't bring 10 to 12 inches of rain to a particular location.
Yeah, Mike, it's been a remarkable set of rainfall.
We talked about the flood concerns. Let's head back to the Treasure Coast. That's where we find meteorologist Mike Seidel, not far from Daytona Beach. Mike, you had some ponding earlier. Has a lot of that subsided, and a lot of the high water that was covering roads kind of had time to drain now since it hasn't been raining as much?
Yeah, it has drained off. It's been dry, almost completely dry now for 3 hours. Just over 5 inches of rain fell at the Vero Beach Airport just inland, and most of that fell in about 4 hours this morning. We didn't get much yesterday or overnight, but it really came in with that little swirl on the radar that sat over us. The only issue on the beach is the beach erosion. No risk of any surge or inundation of property, but look at this cut here by the storm drainage pipe. It's about 3 feet. Let me walk up the beach. You'll get a sense of how we've lost some sand here. Now, again, this will naturally fix itself. The sand will redeposit itself over time. But you can see the surf out here continues to come up here. Now, we've been seeing the tide going out now for about 3.5 hours. Next low tide is at 5:45 Eastern. So we've got a ways to go, and the wind is still blowing on shore and still gusting upwards of 35 miles an hour. Looking down the beach, you can see how the surf is churned up. Yesterday we had about 1 to 2 footers, maybe 3 footers, and now we got 7, 8 footers breaking way out. But look up at the sky right now. Now, I checked the pressure at the airport. It's 29.62 inches of mercury. So we don't have an eye, certainly. We don't even have an official tropical storm, but we are seeing some clearing here in the area. So the lowest pressure with this potential tropical cyclone is right here in the area of Vero Beach. Melbourne's pressure is a little bit higher. So we had the rain this morning. We didn't have any severe weather. Just those winds blew down some palm fronds. The waters receded, as I mentioned. And so now as we get into tomorrow, we'll have the sunshine back out. Winds will go offshore. Northwest, about 10 to 15 miles an hour. That's good for surfers. That'll clean out the wave sets out here in the Atlantic, and that'll be good for surfing. Also, as the winds go offshore, slowly the rip current risk will lower. But be on your guard tomorrow, especially at unguarded beaches. So, Dr. Nab, what do you think? Is that the eye of PTC #1 up there? You know, I'm just being facetious, but looking at the barometric pressures, it's the lowest pressure is in the area. I can attest to that.
Yeah, and I think you're still kind of on the northern side of the center of the broad low, but there are little swirls in areas of relative low pressure moving around that. So that's the nature of a disorganized system like this. It isn't quite organized enough to be a tropical storm, but certainly has the impacts, and it is, fortunately, on its way out. Things will be getting better as the day goes on. But, Florida, not the only place.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. The sun is out here at Vero Beach. The rain has ended. We may get a couple more showers, but by and large, it's done with. Take it back to this morning. We got doused by this little swirl on the radar. We have very little rain yesterday and last night, but right after sunrise this morning, it started pouring here in Indian River County, and that was it. It just rained and rained and rained till a little after 11 o'clock. 5.31 inches of rainfall here. Just up the coast in Melbourne, they've only had about 1.5 inches. So puts it in perspective how tight that gradient was, but only about half of what they saw down in Miami-Dade and Broward counties, where they had worse impacts. We had some street flooding and some roads that had water on them, but that has now all drained off. Right now we've got an onshore wind. It's a little north of east. Our pressure is kind of bottomed out, so we're near the center of the lowest pressure with this potential tropical cyclone. And even though it didn't get a name, the Weather Service in Miami, Melbourne, and Key West did a bang-up job getting out those watches, those flood watches, and all the warnings. Miami was just inundated, literally, with warnings overnight and this morning. And also the National Hurricane Center, which tracked this in, and even though it didn't get a storm name, and people will discuss that in days and weeks to come, they got the tropical storm warnings up. That's the advantage of the new system giving an entity the status of a potential tropical cyclone. Meanwhile, let's look at the surf. Look at that, boy. Now, once that wind turns offshore, it's going to clean up the sets, but the wind is still onshore at about 15 to 20. We're gusting 30 to 35, but boy, the sun comes out, it really lights up the surf and the breakers and the white caps. We have beach erosion. We'll walk down the beach here, about 1.5 feet here, and right in here we've got a little over 2 feet that we've lost. It will naturally replenish over time, so we've got that going for us. But if you come out to the beach tomorrow, remember at high tide the water is going to be up to here, and you got the big drop off. Low tide coming up at 5:45, so the tide is going out, but it's not going out as fast as it would because we still have the wind blowing onshore. Talked about the rainfall and the flooding. That's all drained off. So now really it's about the wind backing off tomorrow. It'll weaken, back off, and come around from the northwest offshore tomorrow about 10 to 15 miles an hour. Pretty good beach weather coming up again tomorrow with the wind going offshore. The rip current risk will start to lessen, but be extra careful, especially on unguarded beaches. Right now, we're in pretty good shape. We had some kids in the water earlier on both ends of the beach here. We were a little concerned because we didn't see any parents, and it doesn't take much to get pulled out into the surf. You can see the whitecaps as far as the eye can see. Completely different situation for us yesterday when we had a southeast wind at about 5 to 10 miles an hour. Water temperature 79 here, low 80s down in South Florida. And Dr. Nab, I have to tell you, my favorite water temperature is right around 80 degrees. I've been in the water in Miami, and I bet you have in late summer when it's 90 and it's like soup. So this is really ideal water temperature time before it gets really uncomfortable for some of us as we get into the latter part of the summer and the meat of the hurricane season.
Yeah, because if you've ever been on the beach in June and July and August in Florida, you really get hot. You want to cool off in that water, and it's nice that it's not warmer. And now, of course, the warmth of those waters has been plenty to fuel this system.
This tropical moisture bringing some dangerous conditions, especially earlier to the Treasure Coast north of South Florida. Meteorologist Mike Seidel live this afternoon where the sun is now shining. Mike.
Hey, Chris, good afternoon. Once again, back at Vero Beach. The sun is beating down. It's turned out to be a pretty nice day after this morning. Show you what we went through this morning. About half of the rainfall they saw down south in Miami, Dade, and Broward counties, double digits there. They had many more issues. We did at a time have part of A1A covered with water, but that receded once the rainfall stopped. We had 5.31 inches at nearby Vero Beach Airport, peak winds gusting just over 40 miles an hour, and most of that rain fell this morning. We didn't have much overnight as they did down south of here. What you hear in the background is Luke. Luke is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, and this is his owner, Peter Nielson, and Luke loves going in the surf, right?
He sure does.
Okay, you got the ball. He's anxious now. He's ready. Here we go. Little fun out here in the surf. Let's see if Luke can catch that ball. Watch out for the rip currents, Luke. He's there. He sees it. He's really very good at this. Look at that. There's the, oh, he's got it. Way to go, Luke. That's why they call him a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. Didn't you know that? Retrieves yellow balls from the surf. Seriously, though, the surf is up. It's dangerous. The rip currents are out there. We have the onshore wind still. Tomorrow the wind will go offshore, and that is going to clean up the sets for surfers, and also the rip current risk will lower, but just be extra careful. The only issue we've had on the beach has been the erosion. There was no surge, there's no inundation, all the properties are fine, but you can see how much sand we've lost this cut here. Now we'll naturally replenish, not in a couple of days, but over a few weeks. The sand does return to the beach. A lot of beaches, as you know, around the country, especially on the East Coast, do beach replenishment courtesy of the Corps of Engineers. But they're not planning to do that anytime soon here. So we have the surf up, the rain is gone, the center of this broad circulation is basically over where we are on the Treasure Coast, and the skies have cleared nicely. So the wind is still going to be gusting through this evening, lighter winds tomorrow. A lot of rain with a very slow-moving system at first. Now it's moving northeast at 18 miles an hour, and the only impact really for the entire state, the southern part of the state, for the most part, was the flash flooding, and as Chris mentioned, some water rescues down in South Florida. So Chris, turning out to be a pretty good beach day as long as you stay out of the water. Back to you.
Yeah, for sure.